Good afternoon, everyone. So we come to the second Sunday of the paper series. Last Sunday we had the Clat, and this Sunday we have AILET, the second and the last of the big law entrance papers that you are going to write. And today we are here to discuss what AILET 2022, after changing its pattern, has produced before us. So we all know that AILET announced a pattern change. They did a huge turnaround with their sections, almost, deleting the legal section and the math section. So with 3 sections and 150 questions, AILET 2022 is a landmark paper as the first paper with no legal reasoning, first major paper to do away with legal reasoning section. So let's see what this paper had to offer. You have seen our first impressions. We just finished with our first impressions where we spoke to candidates who came after giving the paper and told you about their experiences. So there was no basic glitch that you could see. It was an offline paper conducted by NLU Delhi at select centers in the country, and from no center we report any glitches that students had to face during the exam. The overall analysis of the paper that has come forward is that yes, the paper was lengthy, mainly because the 50 marks of English that you saw in the paper comprised only of passages. So we were expecting that yes, they are going to give major passages. Some of our mocks gave you only passages, but many of our mocks kept it in between passages and a lot of grammar and vocabulary, because traditionally AILET asks a very balanced paper. They give you word-based questions, they give you grammar questions, they give you passages. But this year, AILET shifted entirely to passages. And as a result of it, the whole paper became lengthy. Passages had questions. There was a passage with 3 questions to a passage with 10 questions. And mostly passages had 5, 6 to 8 questions. And that made the total of 50 questions based only on passages. Overall, the question level was moderate. It wasn't very difficult either in logic or English or GK. Of course, cutoff is expected to be much below last year's, because last year you had a mixed paper and not just passage-based paper. GK had very little direct current affairs. Most of it you had to use analytical reasoning to associate the topic, the question, to the current affairs. And of course, there were many knowledge-based questions in GK on films, Satyajit Ray, 2 Pulitzer Prize. So there were some knowledge-based questions in GK. So like Clat, AILET this year had a twisted kind of GK again, which could also have a role to play in pulling down the cutoff. So let's begin with GK. GK had 30 questions. A good score in GK is 17 to 19. This is what we are predicting. And, combination of current affairs plus static GK, as you could see. So yes, there were current affair questions, but these 22 were also not direct current affairs questions. You had to associate the question asked to the matter. So that's how you would say that, there were current affairs. So you had questions on between March, April, May, in fact. Like last year, had questions from just before the month, most of them. So here there was a combination of March, April, May, and you also had questions from 2021 around October, November. And you had mixed questions again, national, and as I said, there were cultural questions, you had films, and many questions were context-based. So there were no direct questions, so the context of the events, the current affairs, were tested rather than the actual happening. So there were many questions on context based, which also put the current affairs question into a very, twilight zone. So many of the candidates will not even regard them as current affairs questions. But yes, Were they related to anything in current news? Yes. Did you have to draw a relationship? Yes. Were you expected to know the context and background? I think so now. So now those who are preparing for 23 and 24 with these two experiences of CLAT and AILET, I think your preparation has to have a lateral zing to it also, which means not just the direct event, but a little background, knowing things around it will be very, very beneficial. So 14 to 17 is going to be an average score. 17 to 19 would be a good score. And you have about 17 to 19 questions here. Logical reasoning. Now, in logical reasoning section, the section did not have any ambiguity or subjectivity that we saw in the CLAT question paper logical reasoning section. Of course, the paper was extremely lengthy, 70 questions purely from critical reasoning. There were 2 to 3 statement assumption questions, some strong weak argument questions that gave you a break from reading paragraphs and paragraphs. So they were one-liner questions. Lots and lots of syllogism questions were asked. So please do practice syllogisms, those who are preparing for next year. Lots of syllogism questions were asked. There were about 3 to 4 legal questions. That too, there was CR in that legal question. Not really a legal question for which you prepare. And you had about 3 grouping questions from AR. Other than these 6 questions, the entire paper 64 questions was only critical reasoning. That too, a maximum thrust was given to paragraph-based reasoning questions that you have in your purple books and that you have on MyZone. And you had some questions on statement assumptions, about 3 that I remember seeing. And you had about statement argument was there, single statement questions. And lots of syllogism questions, so that added to speed. So you could have done about 50-55 questions, and that would take your score to about 42 to 46 in the logical reasoning section. English had only passages. You had about 8 passages, and with questions varying between 3, 5, 6, 8, 10. So there were some passages that were only 1 paragraph, but there was there's an interview question that you saw in English. Then there was a comparison of book reviews. So that was something very novel and very good. And other than that, there were passages from news. There were passages from different forms of reading, and a narrative passage on a bride ready to leave her home. So you had a mix of passages there, and you had some tone-based, and it wasn't an overall tone that was asked. Tone of the last paragraph, tone of the author when he or she says this line. So there were a couple of tone-based questions there, lots of direct fact-based questions, lots of inference-based questions that made the body of the questions in the passages, and of course the central idea questions were seen in the English section. Since there were so many passages, we came across about 4 or 5 questions that had little off options, so maybe ambiguous answers, which we are going to do in the section analysis of this paper. Otherwise, because of so many passages, one feels that an average candidate would be leaving about 2 or 3 passages at least, considering they have to do a 70 question in the logical reasoning section also. Most candidates we spoke to started with logical reasoning, went to GK and then came to English. So on an average, I have a feeling that students would have attempted about 5 to 6 passages at their best form. And making way for the ambiguous answers in the passages, a score of 21 to 26 is what we expect in the English section. It could go for some very good students, it could go up by about 3-4 marks more, and that would be the overall thing for English. Right? So yes, it was a harrowing paper. The moment a candidate saw all those passages, I think you would go into a tizzy thinking, how am I going to do this into 1.5 hours? It's like, a whole book that I have to read rather than a question paper. But GK would have taken about 5-10 minutes for those who knew it. There weren't passages there. Logical reasoning, if you are good with syllogisms, if you have been practicing paragraph-based reasoning, which I have been stressing on, I think you would have pulled through there at least 55 questions and then come to English and did your best with 5 passages at least in order to make it to NLU Delhi. So because the sections are not tough in terms of question content, but very lengthy, that is bringing down the cutoff. GK of course is difficult, then that cutoff comes down. Sorry, that's DIFFI, that's just a typo there. And logical reasoning, again, we have scored it very, very conservatively here. But let's say that even if you put it to 50, I think the cutoff will rest somewhere between 82 to 88 for the final list for NLU Delhi. Maybe the first list cutoff goes to about 90, but that is again assuming everyone is well prepared and they have scored on the higher side of our cutoffs. So that would total up to 90 there, but somewhere between 82 to 88 will the final cutoff for the last list will go. So it was a moderate to difficult paper, hence the cutoff is almost 10 marks short of what it was last year, and that's how it will be for this year. And if the AILET trend continues like this is what the scoring will be. So we would like to hear your attempt and your expected score in the comment section, and we will be back soon with our sectional analysis. So those of you who have given the paper, please do come back for our sectional analysis. It will be announced on our channel. And those of you who haven't, attempt the paper first, then come back anytime to watch our sectional analysis. Thank you so much. And I hope you saw our results from CLAT. We are very, very proud of having almost a clean sweep in all the cities that Clat Possible is in, with our classroom rank as low as rank 3. So 3, 5, 7, 9, and the list continues. Please follow our testimonial sections very soon on this channel and go onto our website to take a detailed look at our result. Thank you so much.